Hello, everybody. This episode is sponsored by Wow Boutique. You didn't hear it from me, but what better time to get a great deal on the best clothes than now? You can come out of these COVID times with an excellent wardrobe. Wow Boutique is here for you. They carry your favorite brands at prices that you won't believe. Doors open every day at 9 a.m. except for Saturdays and Sundays. They're located at the Uptown Liquor Store in View Fort. Now, here's the secret, okay? Y'all listening? You can get 25 to 40% off everything for the season, all right? And this offer ends on January 8th, okay? So, hop over to Wow Boutique at the Uptown Liquor Store in View Fort. And when you get there, tell them we sent you. For more information, you can call 715-0793. All right, so hello and welcome everybody. Welcome to another episode of Family Reflections. I'm Keddy and she is
And
uh
I am Kaysia Verneuil.
all right, so we're all in here today. We're glad to have Kaysia in here with us. Is it Kaysia or is it Kaysia?
Kaysia.
Kaysia, okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we're gonna have a discussion today about relationship communication. I think, and I've heard that relationships the most important thing in life, period. That's how I see it. I don't think
Period.
there's very many things that are more important than the relationships that we have, not only with our friends, but with our families, with our spouses. Would you guys agree with that?
Definitely. I definitely agree with that because if at the end of the day you don't have a relationship, what's your purpose? What are you doing? What you doing for? It's so
Right,
important to have relationship with friends, with family. That's just the basics of life.
right,
Yeah. So I agree.
right. What about you, Kina?
Yeah, definitely. Human connection is the premise of our being, the premise of human life. So
Right,
it is important.
right. So with that being established, I think it's a little interesting how we don't have any sort of formal education on communication with people, really dealing with relationship communication in a proper way. Um, I think that would go a long way. Why do you guys think we don't really teach that skill in schools, or there was no maybe you guys have some sort of formal education on communication, but I don't. What do you guys think about that?
Okay, I think I will go first. For me, most of the times we hear that communication is vital, but why is it vital? They haven't really taught us that at school. They just expect us to know that we need to communicate and whatnot, but why? What is the main reason why we need to communicate in relationships with our friends, our spouses, our children? Why is that important? And that is something I find that schools have lacked in teaching these proper skills so that we as a society can grow and build on healthy communication for healthier relationships. Yes.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that needs to be formalized, but we are taught informally communication through our many interactions within the education system, through the many courses that we undertake within the system. There is interaction, and with interaction, you have dynamics coming into play. You learn how to resolve conflicts and different things. So it is there. It's just that it's not, like I said, it's not a formalized thing. And I think that maybe it should be, even within the HFLE subject, that could be incorporated within it.
What would we expect to see if it was incorporated, though? Because I find there's some things that can be taught in theory. There's a lot of things that we learn theoretically, but when it's time to actually apply it, it's a little different, right?
Yes. I think we will have a lot of more healthy relationships in society if we definitely taught communication, the barriers, and sometimes just understanding that, persons are not psychics. So you have to be able to communicate to people effectively so that we can gain the result that we want. We can gain the we can it can just improve on our happiness on the whole. Yeah, when we are able to communicate these things.
All right. Absolutely.
Practicing effective communication is one thing, and you would definitely see a change in how society functions and how we as human beings interact with each other. So that is where communication is imperative to building society and building healthy relationships. Even with our family, you say that family is the foundation of um, socialization, basically. Even within those families, we do not have effective communication. We do not have that resolve that is needed to effectively communicate. And when that goes through into the school setting, then you find you now have to open up to other types of personalities and characters, and you're not sure how to interact. And that creates problems. And that's why we have a lot of conflict within our society.
Yeah, and definitely because it's broken relationships and certain things that we could have avoided, we have to
Right.
go through all of these layers just to, resolve it and make it a better thing. Where in the first place we could have just been open and know how to communicate and whatnot to make life just easier.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But it's one of those things that's easier said than done, right? I want the listeners to know that in all these things we're saying, we understand that yeah, it's a little tougher than it sounds, but it is important to work towards it, right? I know along the line here we're talking a lot about the effects of good communication. We're talking about the effects of getting this thing right. But what does poor communication look like? Maybe if we really define poor communication, then we can help people on the line to really hone in on good communication and what that might look like.
Okay,
So,
should I go first?
oh, you could go ahead.
Okay. Well, for me, poor communication represents um you just expecting somebody to know what you want them to know without actually saying it. For example, I can give a personal example with my relationship. Well, I'm married now, and sometimes, as women, we expect our husbands to just know how we feel or how we want them to act or what we want them to do. And if they just, for some reason, they do not live up to that expectations, we want to just puff up ourselves and we're mad, we're on the bed or whatnot. But at the end of the day, we need to communicate our issues to them, because if we don't communicate how we feel, what's going on, like I said, we can never they can never know. And that alone is an issue, because I never open my mouth and say, you know, babe, this is the issue. I want you to do this. I want you to do that so I could get the result. And then he can talk and tell me, babe, I couldn't do this or that because of, or I am going to do it now that I know how you feel. But I just they vex and I puffing up myself. So even if I just like communicating with my gestures, my actions, but I think words is more powerful in that form of communication. So for me, that would be a bad form of communication. Yeah.
Right. So basically, they're using more of your words and not assuming that the person knows what you're thinking, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I see that too, but I also see uh because they do say that nonverbal communication is a large part of the whole equation, right? So where is the
Yes, it
balance
is.
between nonverbal communication? And by nonverbal communication, I'm referring to body language, cutting your eyes. I'm referring to those subtle hints that somebody might not always catch. But where's the place for those things? Is there a place for that as well?
Of course there is. Of course there is. Because you cannot tell somebody no and then your body language is saying yes, or vice versa. So for me, even if my body language will say no to, I also feel like I need to communicate that like in a firm manner with my voice, with my body and my actions. And the same way, if I'm happy, and I'm saying yes for something, my body needs to show that I am saying yes in order for there to be a flow in my message that I'm trying to bring across. Yeah.
Hmm. Kina, do you have any thoughts? You look like you thinking of something.
No, I would not have used the I say no, my body saying yes example, because automatically my brain goes into um, certain
Sexual assault.
situations, sexual, right, sexual assault. That's where my mind went, and I'm like, no,
Oh,
we
well,
don't
not
want to,
necessarily.
insinuate. I'm
No,
saying
not
no, and I'm being raped,
necessarily.
and because my body is reacting, biologically means,
Yeah,
hey,
but
but
not necessarily that, but that too, but not necessarily that, because sometimes you can say no for something and then you react in another way. For example, if your friend tell you, Keisha, um let's go to the beach today, for example, and you're like, um yes, I want to go to the beach, but you never go to the beach, so that's like improper communication. Yeah.
Right. Well, I kind of see.
yeah,
I think I see both
but
points there. No, go ahead.
no, I was just saying, yeah, body language plays a great deal in communication, nonverbal. So you're communicating something important to me, or I asked to have a discussion with your conversation, and I'm playing, my body is angled, away from you. It's like I really don't care what you have to say, but I'm in the conversation, I'm responding. It reminds me of marriages, and you want to have a serious discussion, and your wife is at the sink washing dishes, and really like you're getting annoyed because you want to have proper communication. You feel that this person is not putting in the effort to communicate and giving you their full attention. So it does play a key role, and it can create a lot of conflict. Even with it's not what you say, it's how.
Okay, and I think you just got muted there.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah. So I was saying, there's a saying that it's not what you say, but it's how you say it, but it's also how you react. So we have to be considering. We have to take note of these things when we're communicating. It's what we say, it's how we say it, and it's how we react in the situation, what our body is saying as
You
well.
know, I'll be honest. I never thought about the reaction piece of communication because
Mhm.
I've always thought of communication as sending out your message as best as possible. But I really want to
Yeah.
resonate with what Kina just said about the
Yeah.
reaction. Very often we impede communication because by the time the person tells us something, like as soon as the person says something bad or something that we might disagree with, or we feel that we're being attacked, the immediate reaction is defensive, right? A wall goes up and you completely cut the line of communication because you don't like what's being fed, instead of staying open to what is being communicated to you. So I think that's a very good point. I'm taking it as a very good point because I want to run with it a little bit for myself.
But in addition to that, Keddy, it also has to do with you're speaking, I'm saying, but you see, communication, it's like we don't listen. We don't communication involves listening. We don't listen to understand. We listen to reply.
Yeah.
So you're saying that before you even finish what you're saying, it's whatever that comes out. The person is already on the defensive. They're already
Right.
putting up the barrier. They're already getting in attack mode. So yeah, it's not listening. In communication, you have to listen to understand as opposed to listen to replying.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so I think we've started peeling back the layers on poor communication there. But there's something I've been thinking about, and it's kind of I wonder if it's really possible to point to a relationship and say they really have good communication or bad communication if what they have seems to be working for them. Is good communication in a relationship a variable thing? Is it a subjective thing? Is it more of just, oh, whatever works? Is that what it is?
I think each relationship has its own set of communication rules. I mean, there are basic rules, right? But each relationship does have something that works for them. I don't think necessarily the rules that I have set in my relationship may necessarily work for somebody else. But there are basic rules that everybody should follow. As I said, listening to understand, not not speaking out in anger when you're hot, when the fire is still hot, and you just, something the person may have said that didn't go well with you, or something the person did really upsetting you, and you want to come in, you want to have a conversation while you're hot tempered. That will not work. So these are basic rules that I may have in my relationships. Just waiting the 24 hours while I cool down, because I know myself, I cannot converse while I'm hot tempered.
Yeah, so definitely those basic rules. Listeners, if you can hear a little bit of rain there, I'm sorry, there's not much I can do about that. But I think those basic rules are important. And if we can define those on the call here, maybe somebody can run with them. So as you mentioned, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, for me, I feel like communication is so important in a relationship. It's not just a subjective thing, but it comes as a whole. Well, for me, in my relationship, for me, it shows respect when you communicate to me. It strengthens my relationship when I know how you feel, what you trying to expect, what you expect from me as a partner. For me, communication, it also improves my bond in the relationship, because if I don't go talking to my husband for a while, like, to me, I feel like we're growing apart. So it's important for us to always communicate, talk, and express each other, show each other love in a positive way, or whether something is going bad, to talk about it. It also Communication is important, because if I am guessing that something is not right, or something is going wrong, rather than just assuming it, I can go to him and speak to him about it. So that alone, it just builds and strengthens my relationship. So it's not just a subjective thing for me, but it's part of the whole.
Right, and I agree that for sure, from what you've marked out as what you need in your relationship, it sounds like that would definitely be the way to move forward. But you hear about these old relationships where there's this old man and his wife, and they never say anything. They just sit down on a bench for 50 years,
Yeah.
and they seem fine.
Yeah.
So how would we correlate what you just said to a situation like that?
Yeah, I definitely get what you're saying. Like, for example, with me, there was a time when my husband came from work the whole week. I said, babe, how was work? He's like, oh, work was good. It was okay. I'm like, babe, that's alone. You can come and tell me work was good and work was okay. How you expect me to know how your day was, or like, leaving nothing to my imagination. So that alone was a problem for me. Yeah. So then after that, the following day, you find that he came and he explained to me how his day went, and he gave me a longer description of what happened and whatnot, and I could have a better conversation with him, and that alone just made me feel happy and whatnot. So for some people, it may work where they just say, okay, my day was good and whatnot, and that is enough for them. But I find like you can go deeper within your relationship. To me, it builds that stronger bond when you can just go deeper with it, as opposed to being superficial on the surface with a conversation. To me, just kills the relationship. Yeah, like it just blah. Where's the spice? Where what are we doing here? Yeah. So I don't like the superficial conversation. Yes, no. Mm-mm. For some people it may work, but for me it doesn't work. Mm-mm.
See, that's where I was saying that communication, it's the rules, and what works is up to the couple, because what may work for her may not work for somebody else. And Keddy was saying about the old couple sitting on a bench and not really communicating. But remember, we just spoke about nonverbal communication. So maybe the couple sitting on the bench and they're holding hands, they're hugging each other, they're communicating with their body language. So they're not just completely isolated or void of communication. The other thing too, when Kaysia was speaking, I realized, you know what, communication is the foundation of a relationship, because without communication, you do not have love and you do not have respect. And in a relationship, you need these two things, but these things are premised on communication,
But hold
as you
on.
were saying, Kaysia.
Yes, definitely.
No,
So
hold
true.
on. So the question just popped up in my head. Is communication necessary to, like, is communication evidence of love? Is communication always present where love is present? Is that a
Yes,
fact?
yes,
Of course, that's a fact. That
it
is
is a fact.
definitely a fact.
So
There is,
so we
That's
don't think
there is,
correct.
somebody okay, so we don't think somebody could love somebody and not tell them though?
you, Keddy, you're bringing up something else. We're talking about having communication, and there being love. You cannot have love and you don't have communication.
It will not
Love is
survive.
premised on communication, whether it be
Yes.
non-verbal or verbal. It is premised on communication. And even if
Mhm.
you may not verbally tell a person, "Hey, I love you," your actions will prove to the person that you love them. You're communicating through different mediums, right?
Right.
We need to
Mhm.
acknowledge. We just justified that non-verbal is also a key part of communication. It's just as integral as verbal communication. So again, you cannot have love without communication.
Okay. But I still
I
want to push
agree.
back a little bit. No, hold on. I want to push back a little bit because
Trust you.
let's say that we have uh, uh, a guy and a young lady, right? They fall in love. Everything's good. They've been together for a few years. Cool. Everything's great. Then the guy has to go off to the army or something, right? He has to go off to the army. He gets shipped across the world. They can't communicate for a number of months. In fact, they can't communicate for a year or so for some reason, right? Something happened in the war, whatever. They lose communication. Is it fair to say that the love was affected? Are we really saying that the love was uh, damaged by this lack of communication there?
Kenny,
Can
you're
I
looking
can I
at things very
can I answer
microscopically.
that?
you're, okay, go ahead, kids, and then I'll give my piece.
Okay. Yeah. It definitely can put a strain on the relationship because you're not hearing from your partner and you're
Yeah.
not seeing from your partner. So it will put a strain on your relationship emotionally and otherwise. For me, when I started to date my husband, few years ago, he was in the States and I was in St. Lucia. Right now we're together. But it was so important for us to communicate to each other all the time. We use the means of social media with our phones, video call. He called me every single day just to make sure that I was okay, to keep in contact with me, to reassure me of our relationship and all of that. I find if we were not able to see each other and talk to each other and whatnot, that would just kill the relationship. Like, how would I know for sure um that you're still into me or whatnot? So it was very important because of the distance that he called me every day and we spoke to each other, we saw each other via video call and all of that. Because let me tell you, it was already difficult being away from him, where I was in St. Lucia and he was in the States. Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, I think I was kind of looking at it from another viewpoint there, but I agree that if communication is possible, I think love is always accompanied by communication, right? I think that's more of what I'm saying, more along those lines. So in our case, where we have stuff like WhatsApp, we have stuff like Facebook, we have Instagram, we have all these social media tools that we can use to stay in touch from across distance, right? It would be very strange if your now husband, when you guys were courting, never reached out or never messaged you and still said
Right.
that he cared for you,
Right.
right?
Right.
Kina, were you about to say something there?
No, you gave all the social media now saying I still take letters, by the way, people. I love letters. I love
Oh,
our own form of communication.
Yeah, and trust
So
me,
yes,
yeah, he did send cards and all of that, which made the relationship even feel more, real and all of that, because he used to travel
yeah,
as often as he could and send me cards and all of that. And I'm very, I'm I'm an old school type of girl. I'm very
yes.
traditional. Yeah, it was
I
important. And if I was not able to communicate, I feel like that would just strain my relationship. After I already not seeing you physically, I not hearing
Right,
from you and all of that. Trust
right.
me. So communication, it builds the love and also the support from each other. Yeah, from day one, also my husband also communicated to me. Well, let me just go on another facet of it again. Like for him, from day one, my husband already say I'm his wife, and I told my husband I am not your wife until I was I. So I had to communicate that to him. So he had to prove himself too whilst he was dating, and we had to communicate to each other. Okay, I am your girlfriend, and I am this. We're courting, and then eventually we got engaged, and we spoke about it, and then we kept on moving on instead of just saying, okay, um this is what it is and whatnot. But for him, in his head, he had his preconceived notions, but he had to communicate that with me, and I had to agree so that we can be on the level playing field. Yes.
That sounds like a beautiful story there. It's always interesting to me
It is
when I
very
have
it
situations
is,
where guys will say, "Yeah, hey, you're my wife." I
yes.
think it's romantic. That's definitely romantic there.
Yeah.
Not when they're saying it just to delay and to have you there doing wifely duties.
Yes,
That's not
yes,
romantic. So you have to
right.
communicate. You have to
Yeah.
Exactly.
communicate that yes, you're saying that, but we need to action it out in the future, not just keep
Right.
talking.
Right.
Fellas, I can't say nothing for y'all if y'all doing that,
Yeah.
um, while I was doing the research for this episode, I came across this thing. It said that the three C's of a healthy relationship, communication, compromise, and commitment. How would we rank those three?
I beg your pardon, can you repeat the phrases? I was trying to write it.
Yeah, so the three C's, you have communication. I'm trying to
Mm.
make a C for you there. So communication, compromise, and commitment, right? Those are said to be the three C's of a healthy relationship. And it kind of makes sense to me, right? If you get those three things right, it sounds like you should be on the right track. Um, but I kind of wanted to see how you guys would order those three things. Would communication come at the top, come at the middle? Is there one of those three that we think is more important than communication? What do you think?
Well,
For me, I would probably
sorry.
put commitment first and then communication, then compromise.
Okay, so commitment, then communication, then compromise. What about you, Kaysia?
I agree with Kina. That's how I place mine.
So
Commitment,
commitment first.
communication,
Okay.
and compromise.
All
You have to
And
be,
I
you
can give
have
an
to,
example of that.
sorry, I'm not sure if you're hearing the rain, pouring rain by my side.
Hey,
But
welcome into.
you have to be committed um, to the person in order for you to want to communicate and compromise. That's
All
why I put commitment first, because there needs to be that basic thing of I'm going to commit to you. So now that I'm committed to you, I want to make the effort to communicate and to compromise with you.
Okay. So it sounds like if we were to,
Concur.
oh, you were saying you agree?
I concur. Yes. Let me tell you, for example, my husband went out to go to Arizona. My husband has another child, and the child fell off the Ferris wheel, and he haven't seen him for quite a while. So um for me, commitment is important because I know that he's committed to me, right? And then he has to communicate to me that he's going to do something, so I have to understand that, okay, um he has his other responsibilities, let's put it that way, but
Right.
at the end of the day he's committed to me. I have to also understand that um my husband is not fully my world, and I am not his world, but we are part of each other worlds, and there are other things that he has to do. So for me, it is important that he's committed to me, but also communicate that in an effective way so that I understand what you have to do. Yeah, and I will compromise with you and say, okay, babe, this is the case. You have your child, whatever, you have to go and see him. Yeah, I need to understand that because I was not there for his full entire life. There are other parts of his life. So I have to be able to compromise and allow him to do certain things that he has to do as a man. So that's where it comes into play for me. Commitment, communication, and compromise. Because if my husband, for example, telling me that he's committed to me and he just left without communicating to me, and I'm like, that's a World War III bringing there, because you just left, you never communicated to me what you want to do, what not, and then you coming back today because it's coming back in a while, and then you just expect me to smile for you. Hey, no, sir. So the fact that he communicated that, yeah, I had to compromise with him and all of that. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
It's
absolutely.
funny how women like to bring up World War III. That's their go-to weapon. But I was thinking, I'm like, you know what? Somebody could communicate they love you or communicate that they admire you, they respect you, and they don't commit to it. And that's why, again, for the epic commitment first, because you could communicate a whole bunch of things. Because communication is basically you say something and I interpret that message correctly. And you could say a lot of things, and you're just not committed to the person. And that is why we have a lot of things happening in society with people dating and various relationships just going up the bend because people are not committed, but they're simply communicating things and not committing to any of it.
Can I just add
Absolutely.
another branch to that as well?
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, since Kina mentioned the fact about with dating and so many things go on in society, people need to understand that there are different levels in relationships. So some people, like especially with the St. Lucian culture, um, the most times the girls think that as soon as they dating, like they're in a relationship, they just want to date this one person, and they never really communicate that with each other, that you're my boyfriend and I'm your girlfriend. I have gone through it, so I'm just speaking from my experience. And that alone, sometimes the person thinking like we're just dating, we're not yet courting, and and whatnot. And the other, so we need to communicate from the onset of the relationship. What are we, or what we want to be in the long run, or in the short run, or whatnot? And where are we right now? Are we just dating? Are we boyfriend and girlfriend? Are we courting? Are we looking to be married and whatnot? And we need to commit to whatever we're saying that we want to do at the end of the day.
Right.
Yes.
And I think even then it pays to pay careful attention to ensure that the person that you're communicating with is genuine, because sometimes communications can be, can have a little seasoning that isn't real.
Right.
And it's unfortunate when people do that. It's an evil thing to do to someone, but it happens.
Yes.
So yeah, be honest with your communications, folks. But another thing I find interesting about these three C's, listeners, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the three C's of a healthy relationship: communication, compromise, and commitment, under this umbrella of relationship communication. But it seems like every single one of these is connected to the other, right? So they're all joined at the hip. It seems to me that without communication, as Kina actually said this already, without communication, you can't really have compromise now, can you? And then without commitment, what's the incentive for the communication, right? Without compromise, it means that your communication probably is bad. It doesn't work very well. And then all of this is on top of the back of commitment, So it really sounds like all of those C's are kind of the same C wearing a different hat, So I find that interesting. So here's another thing I want to touch on: timing. Because you mentioned a while ago, you were telling us a little bit about situation with your husband there, or something that might result in World War III, right? And
Which he just came in. He just arrived
I
though.
saw the look on your face, so I knew he was there.
Yes.
what's up, husband? But yeah, how does timing affect our ability to communicate. Sometimes there are some things that you can tell somebody at a specific time that would make so much more sense than mentioning it at another time. And as a guy, I can tell you, we're not good at this at all. When it comes to
But that's
timing.
what I was saying earlier,
Yeah.
Keddy, right? About the not saying something when you're hot tempered or the pan is
Exactly.
burning
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah.
So yeah, timing plays a key role. So I have this thing because I am a bit impatient at times. That is a sore point for me. So I learned that if I have an issue with somebody, I would you would probably see it through my communication, or if I think Keddy, you notice that at times too. Like if I'm like my head is not there and you're communicating with me, I'll be like K, because I'm like I need to zone out and focus on what I really want to say before I say something I don't really want to communicate at that time, and it messes up everything. So I think timing, you need to give yourself, allow yourself that space and that time to just cool off
Right.
and gather your thoughts and then come back and communicate what exactly you want to say. Because a lot of things can be said that can be very detrimental to any relationship, whether it be intimate or non-intimate. Because even your friendships, they're valuable. So you may communicate something while your head is hot and you're raging and you're just fuming. And then it just burns out a relationship, and that's not what you want to happen. So, but then in also taking the time to cool off, you need to communicate that, because you talking to me and I'm getting hot tempered and I just walk away from you, that too will create a bigger problem. But I need to
Right.
communicate to the person that, hey, you know what? I really need to take this space right now because I want to talk to you, but I don't want to come off in a defensive way. I don't want to attack you. I don't want to insult you and all of those things. So I really need to get away from the situation, gather my thoughts, and then we could discuss this again. The person needs to agree to that because, again, you do not want to just leave it hanging and the person is getting even angrier than you are. And then things just get to a sore point and it becomes irreparable.
Right. No, absolutely. And I can actually come out and give an example in my own life of that. It's not it wasn't really a situation where I was upset. It was more so a difficult point in the relationship. We were having a really bad time. And I needed some time to think. I wanted to just kind of hash things out. And I didn't say anything. I didn't say that I was doing this. I
Yes,
kind of
that
just,
happened to me as well.
yeah, I went and just took the time that I needed.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
yeah, we ended up making a mess there, right? So
Yeah, that
that,
happened to me. I can testify to that. Like I was just going through a breakup with my best friend, and for me, she did something, and I just was furious. So I just went off WhatsApp. I went off everything, and I didn't communicate to her that I needed time to, think and cool off and whatnot. And when I came back, I thought about it. I gave myself 2 weeks to think about what I'm going to do, as opposed to even give her a chance to communicate until I need time to cool off and whatnot. And
right,
this is what, and I just, I wrote this letter. So for me, that was a bad form of communication
right,
because it didn't result in anything positive at the end of the
you're
day.
at that point you're being selfish. The person sees you as being selfish, and no matter
Yeah.
what the person may have done to you, they do deserve
Mhm.
that level of respect to know, hey, it's for me and it's for you that I take the time to just cool off.
right, right,
We're going to
Yes.
discuss it, but I need to cool off. Because you cannot, another
Yeah.
thing, you cannot sweep things under the rug. You cannot just avoid the situation. You cannot decide like Keddy did, just unum and take time on your on your own without saying anything, right? You're like, I'm
Yes.
man, right?
yeah, yeah,
And
mm,
just go on to your own thing. And the person probably one day, okay, we broke up, and then somebody goes and do something even worse, and you
right,
come back and you're
Yes.
like, oh,
right,
but I didn't give you space to go and do that.
right,
Oh, I didn't mean we broke up. They don't
right,
know, right? You just
yeah,
stop communicating for 2 weeks. What do the person just there waiting for you to come down?
right, right,
No, it
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. So
yeah,
that time it could make things even worse, as I said. So you need to
yeah.
communicate that.
Exactly.
And you really have to consider what's happening in your absence, right? Because sometimes silence can speak so much louder than words, where
Yeah.
you have somebody who is pining and thinking like, oh man, this person's just gone. I lost this
Mhm.
person. It's over. And what happens is what you've now started is you've started the healing process in this person, because now this person is actually processing losing you already. So you're already gone. And now this person has had to sit down and really just deliberate, like, okay, what is my life now without this person in it? You know? And
I did say I was going off. Yeah, I did say it was going off, but I felt like based on what Kina said, I felt like I needed to give a further explanation as to why I'm taking the social media hiatus and let her know. Because even when I was going off after the day after what she did, and I'm like, she's like, okay, I will miss you. And that even get me more vexed because you should know. Yes. So yeah, communication was bad at that point, definitely.
whereas I will miss you on her end was a form of endearment. It's like, yo, I'm gonna really miss you. But on your end, it's kind of like, oh, good riddance. You know, so that's tough.
Yes, yes,
But it's real.
and even
Communication
after
is a weird thing.
yeah,
And
even
and we continue to learn in communication.
Right.
I don't think we
exactly.
ever get to effectively communicate because we meet different personalities, and that
Right.
plays a role in the way you communicate. You have to always keep changing the way you communicate to suit certain personalities.
Yep.
So it becomes an even harder thing to do and rather action.
Right. I was reading this book and it was called Audacity to be Queen, and there are different types of person and even their communication types and even their responses and actions towards things. So it was telling you the queenly behavior is one that would act and respond in a, let me see, they are both masculine and feminine feelings, and they're more of a level type of communicator. But we have the passive and the aggressive communicator, and they also have characteristics that suit them. For example, the aggressive communicator, they're more presumptuous and abrasive and all of that, but the passive one would, they were always in their shell, okay, okay, okay. And that just like made me realize that sometimes I could be um passive in terms of just allowing things to happen to me and just always saying okay, but it's important to say no sometimes. It's important to say yes sometimes so that we can be that queenly person that we well, as a woman, that we're supposed to be. Yeah.
So I find that a little curious there, because it sounds like you mentioned that there are masculine and feminine feelings. Is that a real thing?
Yeah,
Is that what you meant to say? Okay, so what I'm just curious, what are some feminine and what are some masculine feelings there?
I wish I could get the book. Let me see if I can grab it. Yeah, so this is the book. Well, I was
Okay.
basically listening to the audio of it, but um, I also got the actual book. I had already buy it, but I also purchased the audio as well. Yeah, so basically, I guess she was explaining in the book because it was from Gina DV. She's the one who wrote the book, and she was explaining that sometimes in society we expect the women to always be submissive and soft and whatnot, and we expect the man to be like the masculine type, but we have both masculine and feminine in us, just that we have more feminine. And the man, for example, they do have both masculine and feminine in them, but they're expected to show more masculine. And I just got the page right here, and she was explaining that there are compliance attitude types, defiance attitude types, and alliance attitude types. And for example, she was saying that when you're compliant, you're always shameful. When you're defiant, you're self obsessed. And when you're alliant, you're assured. And all of that can tell you how you're going to communicate at the end of the day when you have these types of attitude types. When you're compliant, you can be easily embarrassed. When you're defiant, you're harsh. And when you're aligned, you're confident. And at the end of the day, that can tell you, I'm gonna respond or react or communicate a certain way. I can go, you want me to go on with the examples of it?
Well,
Yeah, but
I,
that's just what she was trying to say.
Yeah, you answered my question there because I was hearing you saying that some feelings in and of themselves, which I guess is kind of what you were saying, in and of themselves are masculine and feminine, which is a new idea to me. But you're just saying that in any given person, we can have both of those feelings.
Yeah,
It's just that we're associating them in the book with masculinity and femininity. So
right.
yeah, that's an interesting concept. Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I find it a little funny. So
Yeah.
a lot
What
of the
about?
time, because we are speaking about masculinity and femininity, right? I find it a little funny some of the stereotypes that we have, and of course, a lot of the times the stereotypes are based on some level of fact, um, surrounding how men think and how women think, and how the bridge can be crossed between the two genders when it comes to communication. Um, I know I'm the only guy on the line, so I have this theory, right? I'm not going to hop on it too much because it's just a theory, but I think there the two genders have different cultures. Okay, I think and if we're in St. Lucia, I think I can say there is a male culture in St. Lucia and the female culture, and the way that those two genders communicate, and also just around the world, period, just between men and women talking to women. I think there are some norms and like really cultural norms in the communication within those genders. I don't know if you guys are following me, or if I'm making sense. Is anybody following that?
Yeah, I think I get what
Trying,
you're
yeah,
trying to
I'm
say.
getting there.
For example, like I could just stem back to my marriage, because in my relationship, certain things a woman is expected to be submissive for, and a man is expected to be the macho type of person, and a woman is expected to be the more docile, submissive one, right? Because we living in a more patriarchy society. So I definitely get what you're trying to say. Yeah.
Well, on my end, what I was trying to say isn't so much about the submissive part, but it's more so, uh, let's say you and Kina are talking, right? There are some things and some ways that you might speak that I think are just better understood coming from a woman to another woman, as opposed to a woman to a guy. Does that make sense?
Of course, of course.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the topic as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see that.
yeah.
So then the question becomes, what are effective ways, if someone is in a relationship, to change the way in which they communicate? Because the minute you start talking to somebody, you guys start vibing back and forth, you get to know each other, there's already a pattern being formed in this budding relationship, and you start to grow this culture within your relationship. So how do you now correct the way that you communicate once it's already established?
I try to understand when you say how do you correct it, like in the wrong habits or patterns that has been established.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, for me, I cannot emphasize how important it is to voice how you feel, what you expect, and if something is going wrong, let the person know. To me, the highest form of communication is my mouth, and just talking about it and communicating what I want to see in the future, what I expect, what how I feel, and all of that. So, verbal communication is very important to me as a person. Yes.
Right. So, with that being as important as it is to you, let's imagine that your husband didn't do that, period. How do you then have him slowly adjust to that? Or how do you correspondingly adjust when there's already a fixed pattern in place? Is it that even possible?
Already. But for me, I would let him know. I'm like, babe, I'm sorry. I like to hear certain things. I don't like to assume. So let's just, even if you don't become, outspoken or whatnot overnight, but try as best as possible to let me know how you feel, what is happening, what is going on. Write it on a letter for me if you don't want to say it out loud, but let me know, because that is very important to me. So I have to echo how important it is to me, and also, let him know, so that eventually he can try little by little to improve on that aspect that he is faltering in. All right.
Right. Kina, I think you were trying to hop in there.
Yeah, this goes back directly to what you were saying about commitment, communication, and compromise. It is directly related to that, because without that level of commitment, you'll not make the effort to compromise in that communication style that you want, that your partner desires. And with me personally, I do not entertain any habits I do not wish to continue, and that is my motto. Um, Beginning any habit, whether it be through communication or any other aspect, I'm not going to entertain it, because I don't want you to continue it in the long run. So it's either we cut it short from then. You don't, if you're not going to make the changes, then yeah, you're not going to be around. Trust me. It's a bit stark of me, but that's how I leave, and it's been going well so far. Another
I
thing,
agree.
with me, I tend to be assertive in communication, and as we know, there are various communication styles. Most people can be passive, most people can be aggressive or passive aggressive. And well, again, assertive is what to be the best sort of effective communication. So if you want to reach to that assertive level, you have to be modeling that behavior, and pretty soon the other person will pick up on it, and they will begin to slowly make that improvement to be assertive as well. Because being assertive, you know how to express your ideas, your feelings, and everything, as well as being considerate to the other person's needs. And that's what we should all aspire to be assertive in our communication. And that comes with compromise.
And
Definitely.
I hope I'm following correctly here. When you say being assertive in your communication, you mean having a level of transparency, being able to express yourself as needed, right? Am I
Assertive communication style is premised on being able to express your needs, your feelings, your desires, as well as being considerate of other person's needs and desires.
Okay.
All right.
Right.
It's not one-sided, and that is what we should try to be. And I feel like I agree with Kina on that point, because you also need to embody what you want your partner to be as well. So you cannot just say something and then you're not acting, you're not, trying to be that person. So it's important to embody what you want in your relationship, so that your partner in return can mimic that, and build on that relationship.
Yeah. And a key thing of being assertive as well is something that we should all be practicing in communication, using I statements. We tend to have an issue with somebody or something come up, and we always be like, you do this, you do that, you this, you that. That's not how you communicate. You have to begin with the I perspective and say how that made you feel, as opposed to being on the defensive and attacking the person. So I felt so and so when this was done. The person is better able to understand that perspective, as opposed to you just saying you. And the moment you say that, they now put up this barrier, because you're ready to attack them, and they feel like they need to put their walls up.
It's so hard to do that, let me tell you, but you are so
I
right.
know, I know.
Yeah, I was actually about to say the very same. A lot of these things,
It's all good in theory.
yeah, it's all good in theory and it sounds so simple, But folks, I'm gonna tell you, wherever you are, whichever relationship you're thinking about as you're watching this, it's worth the work. Okay, it's worth the work
It is. It
to
is.
try our best
And
to, yeah.
just start using it with your friends and your family members. And then when you have a partner or there's somebody you're interested in, it becomes a bit easier. And also being able to recognize their communication style from the get-go is a key thing. It will help you deal with it right there and then. Then ignoring it, and then it becomes a problem later on. So
Right.
practice those styles, and then be ready to identify it so that you could understand that person.
Right, absolutely. Um, for me, if someone were to come up to me and ask me for advice, which hopefully nobody does because I don't know much. But if somebody came up to me asking for advice, the one thing that I would suggest for communication and would be to listen, and to listen without reacting too soon. Um, Again, much easier said than done, but it's something that I think I'd like to say I'm currently working on. It's a work in progress, and yeah, that's my recommendation. But what about the two of you? What would you say to someone if you had only one thing that you could tell them about communication, and so one thing that would help them, that you think, in their relationships?
Listen to understand, not to reply. That is it for me. Yeah.
Right. What about you, Kaysia?
Mine would be to be honest, in the forefront, be very honest, and be willing to go through the storms of whatever thing that we feel is uncomfortable to speak about sometimes, because there are certain topics that are uncomfortable to speak about. So we need to communicate that, be honest, talk about it from the get-go, because you will save yourself a lot of drama in the long run, as opposed to just not talking about it and assuming that this is what it should be or this is what you want it to be. Because for me, sometimes it's better to go through the storm and then get the actual result of what it's supposed to be or what I want to hear, or maybe not want to hear, but I know that is the truth. So I communicate that. But if you don't communicate it and you just assume that this is what it is, it's just gonna create a big issue in the long run and a big mess in the long run. So honesty is very important to me, in communication, and also just um, being being able to go through the storms of the uncomfortable topics that we might not want to talk about. Yeah.
And I think that's key to, I think it's key to not run away from the hard stuff, because oftentimes the hard stuff is what will save your relationship,
All
if
right.
you just tackle those things head on.
All
Um,
right.
do any of you guys have anything else before we head out?
Yeah. Well, I let me just say, like, for Kina, like she said, she's not going to entertain any habits um that she doesn't want to see herself in the long run. Sometimes when you're in a relationship, the habits doesn't show early on.
All right.
So that is why I mentioned the point about asking uncomfortable questions and communicating that as well, and being honest. Because when I started dating my husband, while my husband is older than I am. So for me, it was very important to communicate and ask him certain questions. Maybe he would not find that, there was a need to ask these questions very early in the relationship. But for me, it was super important to ask him these questions and for him to communicate the right and honest responses. So I tell him, be honest with me. First and foremost, if I want to stay in the relationship in the longer run, that is up to me. So you have to lay everything down on the table on the very first day, because he was just asking me out, and I'm like, I was no. So he kept on pursuing me, got my number for one of my students because I was teaching at the time, my students' parents, sorry. Yes, and then I said yes, and then from day one, we had a long drive from Labrie, because he came from the Buns Quarter and I was from Labrie. We had a long drive, so we had enough time to speak from Labi to Soufre, because that's why we went on the date. And from Soufre back after the date, we had a long time to speak. So I tell him, be very honest with me. If I decide to go on with this, what is this? What is that? Let me know. I just want to have a feel of you and who you are. So let me know. And he was very honest, and I respected that, because that showed me that he respected me. Um, and that alone created a bond in our relationship. So for me, honesty was key. Communicating, the truth was key, and also just being transparent in everything. That was key for me. So from the get-go, I had to establish that within my relationship so that I could build on it in the long run. Yes.
Right. Absolutely.
I like to think of it as you coming out of the honeymoon phase of communication. You know, when you meet your friends or you meet somebody you're interested in, and even with family members, we go through our honeymoon phase of communication where it's like everything is just like, okay, yes, how you doing? You know, the basic, simple, easygoing conversations. We don't get down to the effective communication where something gets tough and we need to communicate, and that's where it's a make or break. So yeah,
Right.
like Kaysia was saying, you need to be able to have those rough, difficult, tough discussions.
Right.
Right. Absolutely. And come out of them not only looking for the other person to make changes or adjustments, but also being willing to and humble enough to look at yourself analytically and say,
Yeah,
okay, how can I grow? How can I become a better version of me out of this conversation?
right.
Right.
So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
folks, this has uh, been a great conversation. I think very informative, not just for the listeners, but for me. I enjoyed talking to you guys. Kina, do you have anything else for the listeners before we head out?
No, no, no.
All right. So, folks, we'll be back in here again on January 4th. Thanks for joining us, Kaysia. It was nice meeting you. Nice talking to you
Thank
today.
you.
Keddy,
Uh,
thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this topic. It really opened my mind as to different perspective of it. So thank you very much for having me here today.
Thanks. Absolutely. No
Thank
problem.
you.
You're
Uh,
welcome.
Folks, bye for now. See you on the 4th. Happy New Year, by the way. We'll see you then.